787 departure frequency time will be 1257.
25-7.
And without further ado, my name is Colton Seifert, aka SciFi, and I want to be the first to welcome you to SciFi and Friends. All right, welcome back to the SciFi and Friends podcast, episode 2. I am here with Adam Ayers. First, a quick disclaimer about Monster Energy. I know I say I'm sponsored by them, but they have no affiliation with me. I just enjoy drinking Monster Energy, and I have a Monster right here. So just to clear that up, because I know my mom was kind of like, "Hey, you need to check that out." So, but all right, got our espresso. We're in your office with the giant map. This is where we do all of our, I'm going to go ahead and say it, Bible walkthrough videos. We're getting ready to release those later tonight or tomorrow morning. They're all edited, ready to go. So, yes. So, welcome to the show.
Thank
You'll
you,
have to
Colton.
You'll have to hold that.
Oh, I actually have to work?
You have to work. You can only talk with one of your hands now.
Okay. Then I'm going to be half mute.
Yeah. Well, there's no visuals, so. Well, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me on
Appreciate you
here.
coming on. And basically, one time we were filming some Bible walkthrough, and you mentioned spherical time. Okay. And I saw this twinkle in your eye, and you saw the twinkle in mine, and then you said, it takes about an hour to explain.
And lots of hand motions.
Oh, okay. I can hold that mic for you.
Oh,
if you
okay,
want.
good. All right. Just to use your imagination, listeners.
Spherical time.
Spherical time, yeah. So,
It's time that's round.
mm-hmm.
Completely round.
This time around.
This time, you and puns.
Yeah. So what do you want to know?
Well, it's a theory. It's a pet theory of yours, or?
I don't know if it's a theory. It's more of, in academia, what's called a heuristic device. Heuristic. Heuristic device. A heuristic device is a discovery device. It's something that you use to try to figure out a problem, and the device that you use may or not be actual, but it can reveal truth. So when mathematicians solve problems, say, in another dimension, then they can solve a problem that can't be solved in our ordinary dimensions by imagining a dimension in which it could be conceptualized. And then they solve the problem. They can bring back those results to the real world. For example, let's imagine that there are 10 billion universes times 10 billion universes. Right?
Right.
How many universes is that?
A lot.
Yeah. So, although there aren't 10 billion universes, please define universe and give 2 examples. Sorry. You can still conceptualize the problem.
Right.
And mathematically, you could work out the details. It's just a heuristic thing. So for me, particularly with theology, I don't know how this show is about theology. Is it very attenuated to theological questions?
Well, so far, it's been pretty theologically based, but it's you and Wes so far.
Okay.
So we're starting off on a good foot.
Okay, good. A lot of questions theologically that come up about God's activity with people are framed in temporal, time-oriented ways. So, does God predestine people?
Right. That's a huge question.
That's a huge thing. Does God know that they're going to do something first and then he acts, or does he wait? Now, all of these subordinate God to time. So you have to think of, in those questions, God is inside the universe with time obtaining on him, as though time were beyond him, as though God has to operate in time. But
doesn't sound right.
it doesn't sound right, no, because from a Christian perspective, and really from just a base theological presumption, God is not bumping around in the universe.
Right.
The universe is bumping around in God.
I don't think any religion likes the idea that their God is below time.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Atemporal, eternal, any of these things. So then we have to say, is there a way to model our understanding of time that can perhaps lend light on certain theological questions? When I look at it anthropologically,
Right.
because that's kind of a thing I do.
It's a hobby.
It's a hobby. More like a set of hobbies. One of the things that's very clear when you look across cultures is that not all societies rather than saying not all, but societies do not view or understand time in the same way. Societies have different understandings of time.
Do you have an example that you could think of, or?
Ancient Hebrews.
Okay.
They had more of a view of time as though it were circular, or like a blackboard that's being written on, like you write the year on the blackboard by living it out, and then you erase it, and it starts again. Okay, so this idea of kind of a reset, like an Etch-a-Sketch. The cultures that believe in reincarnation have a more cyclic idea of time, that it goes back on itself. Some cultures have more of a narrative orientation toward time, that it's simply a story being spoken of.
That would be more Western type.
Western thinking, particularly North American Western thinking, tends to think of time as a line.
Right.
And it starts
From X to Y.
Yeah. And strangely enough, that's not culturally driven. It goes the same way as our reading. From left to right.
Right.
So you never see time going the other way. But that's a fairly limiting understanding of time. For example, we would say that you and I are in the same moment, correct?
Yeah.
Right here doing the sci-fi blog. Is it blog? No.
Podcast. It's an audio.
I still use paper.
It's an audio blog.
Okay, an audio blog.
There you go.
Okay. All right, good.
Adam
You don't
just
want
turned 27 the other day.
Yeah, that's right. For the 10th time. It's not even the 10th time. Anyway, so we're in the same moment in this podcast.
Right.
Yet our paths didn't follow the same set of circumstances to get here, did they?
No. You were messing around with gangsters before. I was stuck in traffic.
True. And that's a story for another podcast. Oh.
That'll be episode 4.
Yeah. So your set of circumstances getting here and my set of circumstances are different. It's difficult to imagine those in the same sequence, isn't it?
Like
on a line.
Oh, right.
Are those on a line? Are they proceeding at the same rate? Do they have the same sequential aspect to them that, X caused Y, caused Z, caused Colton, caused...
Right.
Versus, was it really the same X caused Y, caused Z, caused Adam to be here? No.
No way, no.
No. So it's awkward to try to imagine a line unless it's a very wide, thick line.
Yeah.
Good?
With a third dimension.
With other dimensions, man. Yeah. Now it starts to get confusing. So if we think about the interrelationship of events, too.
Right.
Now, okay, for all of you have to get kind of philosophical now. So, lay back in a dark room with, maybe velvet day-glow paintings.
Put your black light on.
Put your black light on. Turn on your black light. Sorry.
They're ready.
Yeah.
Our listeners
okay,
are
good.
ready.
Yeah, they're probably already there. Sorry. I just only forgot the black light. More Hot Pockets, bro.
Mom, Hot Pockets.
Hot Pockets. That's right.
Give me my cheesies.
Like, these guys are talking about spherical time?
I want cheesy puffs. It's the time for die.
Anyway, sorry, I didn't just do that. Get out of here. See, you can edit all this out. That's what I like about this. So, if you think about the interrelationship of events and understand that events have to be arbitrarily delineated, there is no intrinsic limit to an event. Got it? For example, when did World War I start? Now we tend, we tend to say, the assassination of Archduke Ferdinand, the Austro-Hungarian Empire, that triggered it. But is that really when the war started, and when did it end? Because apparently, the people of Germany were still pretty uptight into the 30s about, and they were still living it out, right?
Right.
And the repercussions, like ripples in a pond, continue with us today. So when did that event really end? So how big is an event? How big is a moment? It's sort of stretchy in its boundaries.
Sure.
There's no intrinsic. We can talk about the now of spring, the now of 2014, the now of the 21st century, the now of the information age, the now of Western history, the now of our geological era, the now of the life of the solar system. And we can also define it downward into nanoseconds and sub-nanoseconds and whatever kinds
Quantum
of...
and quarks. And
then blizos or whatever they call them.
Blizos?
I just made that up.
Oh, okay. I bet they exist.
I'm sure they do. And these moments that are not even definable as moments. So those are arbitrary distinctions. That also kind of wreaks havoc with a line. Because these moments are connected to each other without separation. The causality of a moment linked to the the cascade of events that go from any moment. I'm sure many of your listeners have heard of the idea of the butterfly effect. Okay.
If they haven't, it's basically the chaos theory, where if a butterfly flaps its wings in Africa, it will cause a hurricane in Florida.
Yes, it can, because of the cascade of events,
Right.
Cascade of causalities, and those can't really be disentangled from each other.
Right.
This is Michel Foucault's point, the historian, one of the architects, really. I wouldn't say it was the architect of it, but one of the key voices that helped precipitate the postmodernisms that exist today. A guy named Michel Foucault, a French historiographer and philosopher of history. And he says there is no such thing as histoire, a large H, capital H, history. There are only small, petit récits, small stories. Because in order to try to tell history, you have to signal out, or you have to separate out a matrix of events that you artificially delineate, then draw causes between them, and you really tell a story.
Right.
You can't tell the whole story, because the whole story is one massive event, and it could still be just one event happening. All of time could be one event. Correct?
Right.
Okay. Now it's time for more Hot Pockets, okay? Time could be just one large event, dude. By the same reasoning, there could be, and necessarily are, an infinitude of micro events on varying scales.
Right.
Now, if we look at a line, obviously there are an infinite number of points on a line, but that doesn't handle it very well because they're so sequential. So linear. Wow. Hey,
that sounds
linear.
good.
So is there a model that we could envision that would accommodate an infinite number of points and simultaneously an infinite number of relationships between those points and an infinite number of pathways between them that could still be conceptualized as a single event or a multitude of points? In thinking about that, what struck me, actually, this was midstream teaching about, oh gosh, over 20 years ago.
This is when this idea hit you?
Yeah, I was in the middle of teaching a discipleship. We do
That's
discipleship
cool.
groups at our church, and I was trying to find a way to talk to them about, let's look at God and these theological questions a different way.
Yeah.
And went, what about a ball? Went, I got to work with that. And
That's awesome.
yeah, it was kind of fun. So trying to conceptualize something that can satisfy all of those criteria at once, what best hit me is a sphere.
Right.
I was thinking of a sphere, infinite number of points, infinite number of pathways across the surface, infinite number of connections between those points, and the size of the points can vary up to the entire ball, right? And that seemed good to me. And the placement could be arbitrary of those points. So say what we would think of as, if we imagine the globe, and what we think of as Sydney, Australia could be, 1492, and what we imagine in the position of, say, Greenland could be Bob spat a sunflower seed shell in the middle of Manhattan in 1936.
Right.
See what I mean?
Something so small.
Extremely minute. Yeah. But the connections between those could satisfy something like the butterfly effect, where all causes or all events are causally linked to all other events. Got it? And it could accommodate the idea of ripples and multiple ripples moving from these events over across to other events. Got it?
Ripples meaning the flap of the wing.
Yes.
What comes after the flap.
The cascades of repercussion and ramification from any given event.
Right. And ripples could probably ripple into other ripples. And
Yeah. All the way across.
a nova ripple.
Yeah.
A nova ripple.
Nova ripple.
That's what I'm going to name my band.
You got to be careful not to get it mixed up.
Ripple nova.
Or alliterative.
Oh. I
Yeah.
didn't get it.
Sorry.
It's okay. I'll re-listen to this.
Just be careful how you say it.
Okay.
That was Nova Ripple? Yes, it was.
Gotcha.
So, and additionally, a sphere could expand or contract as necessary. So you could have a small sphere or a larger sphere, whatever it might be, depending on how many events were necessary. But a small sphere would have theoretically the same number of points. Anyway.
Right.
So then the idea, if you think about a sphere, what's the beginning of the sphere and what's the end?
There is none.
There is none. All points simultaneously exist. Further, if you imagine a point at the direct center, the absolute center of the sphere, within the sphere, the point, think of like the core of the earth. If you were at that point, what is your relationship to any point on the surface?
It's the same.
It's always the same.
Yeah.
So from the center of the sphere, all moments are the same distance away in time. Right? Which makes 1936 and Genghis Khan farted on his pony, right?
Right.
Equally distant in time.
That's the name of my first song.
Genghis Khan farted on his pony. Yeah. Do-da, do-da, do-don't.
And so outside the sphere is not time. It's
Let me get to that.
okay.
Let me get to that because we got to do this step by step.
Okay.
And there are repercussions of that. So from the center of the sphere, this would be equidistant, right? So all points in time are equally accessible and are the same distance. Yet on the surface of the sphere, those points in time are differential and causally linked. Good? So if you were to think of like rays coming out from the center of the sphere, hitting the surface of the sphere,
Right.
all these multiple rays, they're all the same. Yet, if you were to imagine an ant walking on the surface of the sphere, these connections are differential. They have differences between them. Okay, so one can be further away from another. Are we cool yet? So, if we imagine God at the center of the sphere,
Okay.
to him, all time would be the same. Yet to us, on the surface of the sphere, time would be differential. Now we're going to imagine that sphere sort of like a hollow ball of glass. And you take that hollow ball of glass, and we'll say that by some miracle of permeability, you can put it into an aquarium. And the water will be inside the sphere and outside the sphere at the same time. Okay? So it suffuses the sphere. And the sphere is engulfed by the water. So now what's the relationship of the water to the sphere? Well, there's a point in the water on the center of the sphere that is at the same time or the same distance to any point on the surface of the sphere. Yet the water is also all over the surface of the sphere. So the relationship of the points on the sphere is also differential to the water. The water can, if you want to say, trace the distance between these different points and causalities. Now, if we imagine that the sphere is time and the water is God, that time and space are bumping around in God, God is not bumping around in time and space, what it yields is a situation where God is simultaneous to all points on the sphere, along the surface, acting in time with a differential activity in time, and at the center of the sphere where all points are simultaneous.
Whoa.
Okay? Got it?
Right.
So the problem is we tend to think in either or thinking about God and time rather than a both and. And if we can even heuristically conceptualize of a situation in which God could both experience time as differential and experience time as simultaneous, one big flippin' now.
Yeah.
Just one now. Right? That's just now, that one event. And all of the tiny, 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 tiny micro sub-nano events all related to each other. Got it?
Yeah.
All right, now it's time for Mountain Dew. Okay?
We've gone to that level.
We've gone past.
Let me just wipe the sweat from my
There
brain.
we go. Okay. And Funyuns.
Spicy Funyuns.
This is brought to you by Funyuns. This podcast brought to you by Funyuns. Fun Yun. Whatever that means. Thanks for tuning in.
And welcome back to the SciFi and Friends podcast.
Sorry, we went to our Funyuns commercial. So, now let's go a step further. Considering that there is no beginning and end to the sphere,
Right.
okay, how then could there be some kind of conceptualization of now and then? Let's imagine a plane, not like, but a flat plane, a geometric plane, okay? Like a sheet of paper on a basketball,
Okay.
okay? The sheet of paper stays as a plane. It stays infinitely thin and infinitely flat. Now, this plane we're going to imagine is our time reader, okay? And it can be passed in any direction across the ball. The plane crossing the ball. Got it? If a plane encounters a sphere, there is an infinitely small place at the beginning of that intersection, infinitely small, in which there's a start.
Right.
That would be the beginning.
Right.
There's also an infinitely, if you continue that plane passing across that sphere, an infinitely small point on the opposite side. Sorry about just insisting on Euclidean geometry here, dude. I don't want to get into your math problems, okay? We're just doing an imagination thing, so we can use Euclidean geometry for this. So, okay. So then we pass that plane across, and there's an infinitely small point on the opposite side of the sphere, directly opposite, that would be considered the
end.
The end. Good. And how many potential beginnings and ends are there to the sphere?
One. One for each.
One for each point. And how many points are there on the sphere?
Infinite amount of
Infinite. So there's an
points.
infinite number of ways to read this sphere. If the plane is our reader,
Right.
that will read all of the points as you pass across, every point taken into account, and analyze for its causality.
Gotcha.
Got it?
Just caught up.
Okay. So now we're going to imagine Judgment Day. Okay. I want you to imagine God do it respectfully. God on the throne at Judgment Day. And what does he hold in his hand?
A sphere?
A sphere. And in his other hand, he holds
A piece of paper that's a time reader.
a piece of paper that's a time reader. And he goes, let's see. If the first moment in the universe is, frog eats dragonfly in New Mexico in pre-Columbian history, and the last moment is when, you actually believed. That one moment where you had a pure thought. Just one moment, but that was the last thing that happened in the universe. That's the last thing that happened in all of time. He says, well, I suppose we can count you in. But then again, if we started over here and the very first moment in time is a subatomic particle cascades out from uranium in the heart of a mountain in Montana, and the very last moment was when you went, I want nothing to do with this. That's the last moment in the universe. No coming back from that. Sorry, you are fried. And he's just bouncing the ball up and down his hand. And then he leans over and he says, so would you like to bow, or would you like to insist on your own way?
I'll bow.
Okay,
Yeah.
good.
Yeah.
Well, welcome. You know, that was, the last moment in the universe was a good moment for you.
So it's not the first moment is where you're born and the last is your death. It's an infinite amount of points. Just
Infinite amount of points.
Wherever
And the Lord can go,
master wants to call it.
Yeah, the master says, how would you like me to read time? Do you want me to read it with grace or justice? Because you can always bow now and claim the name of Jesus and ask for grace. Or you can stomp up and down like an old Prussian and demand justice, and you could be really had.
Do you think someone would do that?
There are a lot of proud people in the world. I think nobody who has a brain would do that, but some people are pretty
sitting
willful.
on his throne, and
Yeah.
I mean, I'm scared just
Scripture
thinking
says
about
every knee will bow and every tongue confess.
Yeah.
So, the last moment, and with that potential, the last moment in the world, or the last moment in the universe, could be the moment when Mother Teresa went, Right? All one can do at that point is say, I will ask for mercy.
Yeah.
I will ask for grace. I'm a very dependent being in this universe, and I really don't understand the workings of it. And I don't think I have any place to stand up and say, well, God predestines and right? That theology just goes out the window, bye-bye.
Yeah.
Did God predestine? Yes. And did he foreknow? Yes. And is there free will? Yeah. That's all. The question is a little bit, with that conception of time, as God beyond time, God the master of time, God the reader of time, and time is completely connected into one unified whole with arbitrary connections. The idea of thinking, well, there's a sequential movement and God either has to foreknow or you lose your salvation. Those questions are like asking, what flavor is chartreuse?
I wish I knew what that was.
It's a color. It's that like yellowy greeny color that's really bright, right? Chartreuse.
Like a booger.
Yeah.
And I thought that I know what that
when
is.
you think of the color of slime, that's chartreuse. Okay, or like a lizard, real bright lizard. So asking what's the flavor of a color is about like saying, how is God constrained in time in a sequential way to either foreknow or to predestine? And it doesn't negate the biblical language about foreknowing and predestining, because we do experience time as a set of causal events. Yet it does.
I don't think it'll be picked up.
Okay.
And if it does, it's okay.
Okay. Yet it shows that perhaps those words, those theological terms, that language of predestining and foreknowing and that kind of stuff, maybe a heuristic device by Paul to try to accommodate Greek understandings of time as linear. Maybe he's just trying to get them to understand that the Lord has a hand in history before they experienced it.
Right.
And before and after their lives. And when we think about terms about Jesus, I'm the Alpha, the Omega, the beginning and the end.
Right.
Moses asking the Lord,
I am who I am.
Yes. Who are you? He goes, I just am.
Kelsey and I actually are doing a Bible study through Exodus, and we read that part.
Yeah.
In my head, I saw, Moses ask that, and I guarantee there was a pause for God to be like, how do I answer this?
Yeah.
I am who I.
I just am.
He just took a second to be like, wait, hang on, buddy.
Yeah, can you imagine being pre-existent that way? Or just self-existent?
Yeah.
You just are.
Right.
And you have to make up the idea of time. You have to make up the idea of causal sequence. And it's kind of an interesting plaything, but you just are.
Yeah. Yeah. But man is not.
Man is not that way.
No. Even though we are created in his image.
Yeah, just the ground of being. Well, yeah, being made in an image. A marble bust could be made of you.
Right.
It would be made in your image.
Okay.
It doesn't mean it's human.
Right.
And it doesn't mean you're made out of marble.
Right.
Although you do have quite chiseled features.
Oh, thank you, Adam. I've really been working out.
Yeah, it's been that great God thing I'm working on.
Because you always, one of the fun questions to kick around is like, where were you before you were born? Mm-hmm. And so, if you were outside the sphere in that water, like, were you you could have been conscious at that moment and then had amnesia and then got put into time and now we're in time, and then when we wake back up, you'd be like, oh yeah, I remember before going into time.
Yeah, and you don't have to have a pre-existence before you were born, because saying before doesn't make sense.
Before time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anything outside of time wouldn't be before.
Oh, right, because before, okay.
So you can't,
Gotcha.
You don't have to ask where were you before.
Because there was no before.
There was no before.
Right.
You got that?
Got it.
It kind of plays havoc with because we do tend to think in sense of before, but when you hear things like when I read the Revelation and it talks about Christ as a lamb slain before the foundation of the world, then what does that mean?
Yeah.
If this event was already accomplished before the world started. Well, it's on one point of the sphere, and there's another one there. So from in a manner of speaking, you can say it's before.
Right.
But before and after on a sphere doesn't really make a lot of sense.
No.
It's on one place. But how do you put that in Greek language, you see? So that it's more, I think, an accommodation. That language is probably an accommodation to our temporal sensibilities so that our heads don't explode like zombies.
Yeah. Which would happen.
Which would happen. We get too looped up.
You do, yeah. And then you dig up something and you think you figured it out. And then this whole swarm comes in from the left, and you're like, yeah.
Yeah.
Do you think the way that we, as people in present time, kind of disregard the answer of both, like constantly? It's usually, I'm Republican or I'm Democrat.
Yeah.
I'm, for this or against that. Do you think that is America today? Because we will never choose the both. And a lot of conceptual ideas, especially about theology, is both. Like, God can be in and out of time. He's everywhere at once and with us in this moment. And we always kind of disregard both, I guess you would call that reductionism.
I think it's reductionistic. I think it's a function, and structuralism as a philosophical and literary and linguistic theory tends to hold to and indicate that people tend to think in terms of binary opposition. So they define one thing by what it's easier for a human mind to define something by conceptualizing it in opposition to something else.
Metaphor.
Yeah, and perhaps because our neurons work in an on-off way, that might be a bias in our processing that we tend to think on or off. Night and day, man and woman, death and life.
Yeah.
White and black.
Yin yang.
Yin yang. Yeah. I'm sorry.
Which is helpful.
Seahawks and
Broncos.
Broncos. Yeah.
But it's helpful.
It's helpful, but I think it is limited in
Yeah.
our thinking, and it takes a lot of work to try to expand our understanding to accommodate things that are both and. Light as a wave and a particle, or as a packet of quantum energy that operates, well, as a wave or as a particle. Dang.
Like a voice.
Yeah, like a voice. Yeah.
I got that from you.
That's cool. It's pretty good, I think. So I think we want to. We're trying to balance a bowling ball on a razor blade, and it tends to fall off one way or the other. And then we, in order to make ourselves comfortable, I believe, we tend to polarize many thoughts around what our conclusion is. We don't like things in tension.
No.
But jokes are always tensive. Anything that is beautiful and mysterious usually has tensivity to it. There's tension there. And I think we at least have to allow for that mystery to reside with God. I think what it does is it calls us more than anything else. It calls us to be humble. To stop saying, here's my explanation.
I know that X equals whatever.
Yeah, therefore
Always.
it must be.
Always.
Yeah. Yeah. And allow for some fuzzy logic in the universe.
I guess you could say that goes both ways, too. With the person who says, yes, God he's real and he's there. And also the atheist, they kind of both have to be humble in that sense.
Yeah. Well, I can almost allow for an agnostic simply to say, I have not experienced God. I would say, well, there are some people who haven't experienced sight either. That doesn't mean that everyone who has sight is mistaken. It means that you're impaired, and I'm sorry.
What's up, guys?
Yo.
Yo.
Doing a podcast.
We're doing podcast.
Warming up?
Yeah, but he can edit this out.
Yeah. Well, I don't want it. The listeners love you, so.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna bomb it.
Podcast bombs.
Podcast bomb.
Hello, world.
Flash mob podcast. I called it a blog. Anyway,
We forgot about
you're
that.
going to take that out. Thank you, please. Whereas the atheist is making a claim that is just completely beyond, honestly, beyond hubris. In order to make an atheist claim, you have to claim that something does not exist. One is making the claim there is no God. Okay? That's really problematic, because in order to make the claim that there is no God, you have to know the total set of all things that do exist in order to claim that something does not exist. In that case, in order truly to be an atheist, you would have to know all things that have ever existed and be able to define what's in the set universe, all things that ever existed. If you know all things that have ever existed, you're omniscient and you're God, and it defeats your own claim.
Makes sense.
So I would say at least have the humility to say that one is agnostic rather than to make a patently false claim of being atheistic.
Right.
So,
Interesting.
yeah, those are things that people have to wrestle with. As a religionist, I have to wrestle with these things.
Sure.
Yeah.
But in the end, you make a decision.
Yeah.
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 I think that sets a lot of people apart, because a lot of people just wrestle with it. My thought the other day, I told Nick this, I was thinking, like, Satan doesn't really have to beat you. He just has to let the time run out.
Exactly.
People just kind of wrestle, and he's like, oh, I'll kind of let you win, but you never truly make a decision. So it's like, make a decision.
My dad used to have a motivational poster from the 60s. Oh, I just dated myself. When I before I was born,
When the earth was still cooling.
when the earth was still cooling, and a mastodon ran through.
Sparky, come back.
That was the pterodactyl. But he had this motivational poster because he liked to do sales stuff. And it said, "Not to decide is to decide."
Wow.
And I remember being a little kid. It was sort of like a Zen koan reading that and going, what does that mean? It's like, well, if you decide you're not going to decide, you've decided.
Yeah. That's unbelievable you say that, because once late night, I was laying in bed. We had a football game the next day. My dad came in and he was talking to me. I had some college scouts talking to me, and I wasn't quite sure if I was going to do it or not. And the thing that he left me with, and I have this written down in all my little wisdom things, is he's getting ready to leave the room, and he's like, remember, not making a decision is still making a decision. And then he walks out.
Yep.
So that's exactly what
That's
you're
the
supposed
same
to
thing.
say. Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is, it took me months to kind of like kick that around and be like, what? And now I get it.
Yeah.
I get it. You know,
It is.
you think you're sitting on the sidelines, but you're still making a decision one way or the other.
Yeah.
It's that both factor. It's that third option, that we don't really pay attention to.
Yeah, you've decided to affirm the status quo. Never mind that the world is moving beyond you.
Yeah.
So you're trying to hold to something that's impossible, which is a state of undecidedness.
And then when you realize that you've done that, you've lost all that time and you've lost your decision, you've kind of given up your decision-making
Yeah.
power at that point.
Yep. Maybe that's a topic for another broadcast.
Could be.
Podcast, sorry, not...
Broadcast. You
Not
used to do
broadcast.
radio.
Yeah.
What was
Yeah.
that? What was that called?
It was called Interface.
Interface.
Yeah. It was a Southern California broadcast here
cool.
for a number of years. It was fun.
And
The tagline was, not the same questions, not the same answers. So,
Did you make that up?
yeah.
That's cool.
Along with a blizo.
Oh yeah, one of the corks. Hey,
Or whatever.
They're gonna come out with it, in
Something.
10 years.
Yeah.
All right, so we'll rerun Spherical Time. You explained it pretty well.
Thanks.
Yeah.
I hope it gives somebody an escape from theological manacles.
Yeah. It's really interesting.
Remember, I don't believe that this is necessarily how time is.
Right.
I just want to add that disclaimer.
Okay.
I'm not proclaiming that this is how time actually is. I'm saying if we can conceptualize a way that it could be both and maybe we could talk about heaven and hell some other time, and judgment. Because I believe that we can conceptualize a situation in which somebody could simultaneously go to hell for all of eternity and never have gone to hell at all.
Which I heard in your discipleship.
Yeah.
Which was that's definitely another podcast.
That'd be another podcast.
But yeah, that was.
We'll leave that question with your listeners.
I knew that was coming. I was like, he's setting them up.
No. First one's free.
All right. Well, Adam, thanks for coming on the podcast. I always love your thoughts and I love your ideas. I always try to keep up, and so I will be re-listening to this and taking notes and trying to
Draw diagrams.
and a little more spherical. I'm gonna buy an aquarium and a rubber ball, and I'm gonna make it.
Fantastic. Thanks for having me on the podcast. I'm really honored. It's great to dialogue with you, Colton.
It's fun. Yeah, we'll bring you back on in a couple episodes. And
Great.
we have.
Maybe you already have.
Oh boy, dude, the black light's not bright enough for this.
Top the black light.
We're out of Funyuns. All right. I hope you guys enjoyed listening to SciFi and Friends episode 2. We will be recording a new episode soon. I have a couple of guests that may be coming on, and we will be bringing back Adam and Wes. And if you want to hear someone, just shoot me an email or Facebook, and I'll try to get them on if I can. So, all right, Adam, thank you once again. Everyone out there, thanks for listening. Have a great day.